Good morning, everyone. It's Karen Deshay. It's Monday morning. I know I said I'd be on Saturday, but another issue with being the parent of a murdered child. You're not always sure or certain how you're going to feel the following day. You're not sure how you're going to feel within the next 10 minutes. So today I'm feeling a little bit better. Not a lot better, but a little bit better. I want to talk today about time limitations on filing documents when your loved one or your child is taken from you through violence. I know this is a topic that I really don't like to discuss because you're bereaved. The last thing you want to think about is paperwork or filing deadlines, and sadly, the authorities are hoping you're not going to think about it. There's only a certain amount of time that you have to file on certain things. You would have to check within your own state. My son was murdered in the state of Maryland. I'm familiar with the filing deadlines in Maryland. And on some of the deadlines, you only have a year. And sadly, if it takes longer than a year to find the murderer of your loved one or your child, you're out. These are issues that need to be changed. These are issues I fight about every day. These are issues I write emails about, letters about, make phone calls about to the people who can make a difference if they choose to. And a lot of times they don't choose to. So I'll just keep writing emails, sending letters, and making phone calls. Someone has to stand up and say something. I've chosen to stand up and say something, but my nickname in Maryland is Big Mouth Talk Too Much. And I have to tell you, I don't mind at all. I spent 3 decades as a salesperson, and I was on commission, so trust me, that's a compliment for me. I've never been one to sit back if I see injustice, and I'm not going to start now. And this is something I am very passionate and adamant about. I had never known that victims were ignored. They are badgered. They are treated unconscionably. They are treated incredulously. They are treated less than kindly. They attempted to intimidate me, but again, 3 decades in sales, nothing intimidates me. I don't understand the word rejection. I don't understand when I'm told no, and I wasn't going to put up with it. But it takes that perseverance. It takes the attitude of a seasoned salesperson to just fight. And on that built-in fight or flight, I just lacked in the flight part. So I kept pushing, and the truth came out. And I knew it would. It always comes out. The truth is just, it's there. You just sometimes have to keep seeking it. And the first phone call I made, and that's what I'm going to tell all of you. A lot of people that I've talked with, they didn't make a mistake. They just didn't know. And not that I had ever been through a murder. My son was murdered. I did not lose my son. I never lost my son at any point in his childhood. So, no, my son was murdered. Okay? And the young man wasn't a thug. He was and is a murderer. There's no two ways about it. A thug is someone who steals something or is a shoplifter or does petty crimes. The man murdered my son in cold blood for absolutely no reason. No reason. Broad daylight. My son was in his own home where he should have been safe, doing his laundry. That's murder. He was wearing an ankle monitor for a felony 2 handgun warrant he received 22 days before shooting my son to death, and was on a parole violation for a 2009 charge in the county in which he shot my son. This murderer should have been in jail not once, but twice. He is a career criminal and now a murderer. Again, the first phone call I made was to the Maryland Attorney General. The end. I didn't call anyone else. They are there for the citizens to call. Anyone who has a loved one or a child murdered in your state, call the Attorney General's office. That should be your very first phone call. Within 1 hour, my son was assigned a prosecutor and a victim's attorney. Now, number one, I didn't even know there was such a thing as a victim's attorney. There are victims advocates, which I became a victim advocate. I call myself a victim survivors advocate. And I work on my own, and I do not take any government grants. Yes, I segued. I don't take any government grants because then I can do what I want to do. I'll go to that on my next session, why I do not take government grants. So, within 1 hour, Justin had a prosecuting attorney working on his behalf and a victim's attorney working on his behalf. So your first phone call should be to your state's Attorney General. Let them start working on your child or loved one's behalf. That's what your tax dollars go for. Don't go out and hire an independent attorney. Don't go out and hire detectives. If you're being mistreated by the police, call the Attorney General. I was being mistreated. My son was being mistreated. There are laws against that on the books in every state. Well, in some of the states, there aren't, believe it or not. I believe there are 17. I'll check that, and I'll get back with you on my next broadcast. But there's memory serves that there are 17 states who have a real problem with victims. Across the board, every state has a problem with victims. It's just some blatantly have a problem. I'll make sure that I have that information also on my next broadcast. But again, there are deadlines for filing certain paperwork that you can become aware of through talking with the Attorney General's office, who also has a victims department that you can talk with and ask questions. And when you deal with the victims advocacy group in your city or your county. They will give you pamphlets that tell you different time frames. But without having these people and that without having this information, you're not going to know about these time frames. But again, calling the Attorney General, I ended up with a wealth of information that I would have never known had I not called them. But I was having difficulty with the police. They were being very insultive, very intimidating, very, they just wouldn't deal with me. And I have a problem when someone won't deal with me, I just keep calling them. So that takes a lot of tenacity. I feel like my background in sales gave me that tenacity, and I am one of those need to know kind of people, and I do not and will not be ignored. I think that is my propensity as a salesperson gave me that. And when you're on commission, you have to be willing to bite the bullet. I hate using that term now, but you have to be willing to keep going no matter what's thrown your way. So my background definitely gave me everything I needed to continue to move forward. And I literally, I don't know if I would suggest this to a lot of people, but it worked for my personality. I took a lawn chair and went into Prince George County, Maryland, where my son was murdered, and I sat down in the police department. And everyone who came through the door, I told them the story, the real story. And they saw I was not going to go away and that people listened to me. And people do have a tendency to listen to the truth. So don't be afraid to tell the truth. You know your child. You know your loved one. They do not. They were trying to tell me things about my son that I knew were not true. No one was going to or is going to tell me about my son. I know my son. You know your loved one. You know your child. They do not. Do not be intimidated by these people. They are on an agenda. Believe me, there's always an agenda. And the folks in Prince George County, they had an agenda. And I found out what their agenda was. So don't let them try and tell you that you do not know your child or loved one, because you certainly do. But getting back to the filing of documents in a timely manner, because again, you're going to have time limits on documents. And believe it or not, these are documents that you're going to want to file. And it's just different documents that pertain to how you can handle civil suits, or how you can handle recouping any kind of monetary monies from the murderer for the loss of your loved one or your child. There's a ton of different things per state. That's why I'm not actually going to name different documents, because each state gives different I do dislike this. You can't remember words. One of the parents of murdered children, Gail Seaton, her daughter Stacy Seaton, was executed. Literally knelt down, 17 years old, and executed. In Maryland, yes. It's a lovely state. 17 years old. She would be turning 22 this month. And it's just the stories I've heard. But she refers to when we can't think of a word or we lose our train of thought, mind fog. And really, she's right. I can't think of simple things. You'll find for those that I beg to seek out a grief counselor or talk to your doctor or really see a psychologist who it specializes in grief and bereavement or victims of violence and survivors. Um, this is not something you get over easily. We're diagnosed with PTSD. It's not something anyone expects. And again, polite society wants us to all go away and get over it, and that's not how it happens. So back to the documents. I know I keep segueing into other things. I just have so much on my mind this morning that I want to share, and I'm sorry I do keep segueing away from the topic. But each state has their own documents that you, as a survivor who's or a victim who survived violence, can fill out to obtain different I'm sorry, I've lost my train of thought. Fill out paperwork that will allow you to seek out any benefits that you are entitled to. And I know that each state has their own benefit schedule and their own time limitations. So you would have to find that information out when you are contacting the Attorney General's office or find out through your victim attorney that who usually does have this information. And I know it's a time when you really don't want to think about paperwork and time limitations and time frames, but you have to because again, some of the limitations are only 12 months and you do not want to have to also deal with finding out later that you missed out on any benefits that you were entitled to because no one told you about the time frames. This is another slap in the face that a victim or a survivor just does not need. You will find out that there's a constant just tug at your already broken heart by the government. And I don't know when victims became the targets, but victims and survivors are definitely the target. And I have to tell you, I meet a lot of very sad people every day. They're not angry, they're so hurt and so sad because they just kept getting kicked while they were already down. And I just can't imagine that people in the judicial system can actually look themselves in the mirror every day and not feel some kind of remorse or some kind of pain that they cause these people on a daily basis. But obviously, they can get past it. I know I couldn't. I truly, I ended up not finding out about the deadline. I filed paperwork and it, I found out 2 weeks before, and we made it at midnight, the final night. And that's why I wanted to talk about the documents, because here I was thinking I had done everything, that I needed to do for Justin, and I find out that I need to file this document, and it needs to be done through an attorney, and they need to write up this document, and it needs to be done, and they have to do it so quickly, and it's finalized and has to be filed before midnight. And I didn't need that. I didn't need the stress and the duress. I just didn't need it on top of everything else. The trials were still going on. It was just a never-ending plethora of what I refer to as every episode of The Twilight Zone and Hitchcock movie I had seen combined. And that's what I still consider it. So I guess I'm trying to go through the errors and the horrors that I dealt with and make it simpler for others. And because it wasn't simple for me at all, and it hurt. It just added to the frustration and the pain that I was already going through. And I have to tell you, as a salesperson, and I mean high-end sales, when you're on commission and you're working in high-end sales, you deal with a lot of stress. You deal with a lot of people pressuring you to make sure that the sales are done and closed. And sometimes, I would deal with people for a year before a sale was closed. So there was constant pressure for the 12 months. This was so far beyond anything I had ever experienced in my life. And the judicial system did not lighten the load at any point. So be prepared. It's like going into battle, and you have to understand that, because no one is going to be on your side. No one is on the victim survivor side, not one person. So you have to be prepared to be on your own side, because no one, absolutely no one, is going to be on your side. It's a sad tribute to our society. And I learned that's why it's referred to as the criminal judicial system, not the victim's judicial system. And it does work for the criminals and does not work for the victims. That's why H.R. 40, the Victims' Rights Bill, needs to be passed. It will give victims a level playing field, because currently there is no level playing field. None at all. And the defense attorneys are notorious for using the victims as the reason for the crime. And they are getting away with it. And I am just awed. Awed isn't even the word I want to use, but I'm going to use that because the words I want to use are not as polite. But sadly, you would have to be there to know what I'm talking about, and I wish for no one to have to go through what we, the parents of murdered children, endure. Not only do we lose our children, but then we are confronted with everything that we believed in, everything we taught our children to believe in is one huge lie. And that's the tragedy. The huge tragedy. I have noticed in listening to my broadcast, there's a lot of static coming through. I'm trying to ascertain why, so I hope you'll bear with me. Probably because my computer is rather old. It's my son's, and I don't want to get rid of it. And it is probably full of dust, but bear with me. I'll see if I can't figure out why. And I appreciate you listening. I hope that you don't mind Luke, my Springer, barking occasionally. And I hope you understand I'm not angry. I am very passionate, and I do segue a lot, and I do lose my train of thought. I didn't used to have that issue. But again, as I stated, your first call, if this nightmare should occur, should be to your states or the state where your loved one or child was harmed, to that state's attorney general. Let them work for you and your loved one or child. That's why they're there. And it was my first phone call. I wish you a good day. All I can tell you is I'm sorry. I wish I had magic words, but I don't. I'll be seeing my psychologist this afternoon. I'll be seeing a psychologist the rest of my life. So, hope you'll continue to tune in. And tomorrow, hopefully I'll feel up to it. And I'll talk about a couple of the issues I segued into. And again, I did not list documents because each state will vary. But take care, and you grieve your way, whatever feels best for you. And don't let anyone tell you anything differently. It's what's best for you. This is Justin's mama, and I'm going to try to do something today. I just don't know what. I have to take it minute by minute. Take care.